Hey everyone, it's Rebecca with Hands and Feet Homestead. Today we're going to be out in the garden harvesting some of our calendula flowers. Now calendula is one of my favorite flowers to grow. It's actually an herb, but it has so many different uses. It's a great companion for your garden. It goes with pretty much any plant out there, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, melons, whatever. It just makes a really good companion and for pest control. But my favorite reason that I grow it is to use it in my homemade salves. So today we're going to be making some salves with calendula flowers and also some comfrey as well. So this is a couple months back in June, and as you can see, my comfrey plant is completely overgrown. It was just getting so heavy that it was just falling over. So it was time to harvest it and make use of this wonderful plant. So I got some help from my husband for that job today. So we're just cutting it completely down to the ground basically, and we're going to make use of what we have. It's a few months later now, and it is completely grown back. Not quite as large as it was then, but pretty large, so they grow back really fast. So you can get multiple cuttings off of comfrey every year. So comfrey is an amazing plant to grow in your garden. It's a wonderful medicinal herb to grow. It is known for healing wounds very well. They say so well that you shouldn't use it on really deep wounds because it might heal it too quickly. So keep that in mind. But for regular, scrapes and cuts and wounds, even bruises, sore muscles, back pain, things like that, inflammation, it's an amazing plant. Although this plant is a bit controversial for some, it's mostly revolving around internal use, and we don't use it internally here. I'm just talking about topical applications. And I'm going to take the top, more tender, smaller leaves and cut those up, and I'm going to use those to make some salves. And then the rougher, bigger leaves I'm going to use as a mulch for my fruit trees and other trees I have on our property. It's an amazing chop and drop plant. And you get, as I said, multiple cuttings off of it every year. So you can just chop it down and then use it as a mulch, and it feeds your plants very well. And it's great for your fruit trees. I know people make compost tea with it. That's something else you can do with it. There's a whole host of uses for it. It's just a really great plant. One thing to note, it is a perennial. It will come back, and once you plant it, it is kind of hard to get rid of, so make sure you plant it in a place that you really want it to stay. Okay, back to harvesting our calendula today. So some of the benefits of calendula are that it is antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory, and it's known for being great for all sorts of skin issues, mainly cuts, scrapes, burns, insect bites, rashes. It's really great for diaper rash cream, and I always use that for my salves for my babies to prevent diaper rash. I never really have had a serious diaper rash with any of my kiddos so far, and for the most part I almost always just put on a little bit of my calendula salve just as a barrier. And calendula is a very gentle herb for children. Some other good ones are lavender and chamomile as well. So calendula is really easy to grow. You can seed it into your garden and you don't have to worry about it. It just keeps coming back. It reseeds itself readily all throughout the garden. So all of this calendula, I pulled out so much and I had so much left. So it's very easy to grow. And the great thing is the more you pick of the flowers, the more they will want to bloom and grow more side shoots, and you'll get more and more flowers. So when you're harvesting, you want to look for a completely open bloom, one that's really big and wide open, and those have the highest resin content, so it'll have the most medicinal benefit to you. And you can just pop the head off, or you can take the whole stem with it, whatever you prefer. And I usually just pop the heads off like you see me doing here. And then the other thing is to remember to deadhead your spent blooms. So after they bloom, you want to make sure to remove those, otherwise the plant will concentrate on producing seed and not concentrate on producing more flowers as much. So it's good to try to deadhead as much as you can. Okay, so we harvested a bunch of flowers, so I'm going to take these inside and we will show you how we dehydrate them and then infuse them in oil and make some salves with it. Okay, so I'm just going to put my flowers on my dehydrator trays, and I'm actually not going to use my dehydrator. I'm just using the trays, and then I just like to let it dry naturally. I'll usually put it outside because it's nice and hot outside, and just put it in a shaded location where it's not in direct sunlight. And then I like to, I'll show you in a minute, I have this bug net that's actually for strollers for babies, and I just kind of wrap it around it just to keep like bugs and things like that off of the flowers. And I'll just let it dehydrate outside, and it can take, anywhere between 4 days to a week. Just check on it every so often. I also like to do this inside too. If you don't want to put it outside, it'll just take a little bit longer because it's usually a little cooler in your house. If you had harvested the whole stem with the flower, you could also tie them up and just hang them upside down from a string. I made a dehydrating herbs video a couple months ago, and I just was showing that I like to do my dehydrating of my herbs the old-fashioned way, just tying them up with string, and that is the method I use to dehydrate my comfrey as well. I'll link that below if you want to check that video out. You could definitely also use your dehydrator. I just find that it's not necessary personally, but if you wanted to turn your dehydrator on, just put it on the lowest setting. It usually has an herb setting. Mine's around 90 degrees. And I would just set it for maybe 6 hours and check it, and then just go from there and see until it's completely dry. Okay, now we're going on to infusing our herbs in oil, and these are just calendula flowers I had dehydrated from my garden last year, so I'm going to use those up here. Now there's a few ways to do this, and I'll take you through a couple ways. The first way I'm doing is just the most simple, straightforward way. Put your herbs in a glass jar, cover it with your oil of choice. You want to cover it by about 1 inch or so, and put a cap on it and let it sit in a dark place out of direct sunlight for 4 to 6 weeks. And that's about all there is to that. The only downside to that is that it takes 4 to 6 weeks. So if you're looking to make something sooner than that, then you might want to try a different method. This method is actually going to give you the strongest infusion and give you the highest medicinal value. It's always a good idea to label and date your oils. Okay, so here's my comfrey. It's dried actually from last year's garden, so I'm going to get that used up here. And I'm going to take you through another method of infusing your herbs with oil. So start by doing the same thing, covering your herbs with the oil, cover it by about 1 inch. And then you're going to want to use a slow cooker or your Instant Pot, something that has the slow cooker setting. You want to make sure to put your jar on top of a rack. I think this rack came with my Instant Pot when I bought it. But if you don't have one of those, you can just put a towel on the bottom. You just don't want the jar to be in contact with the bottom. And then fill it up with water so that it's covering the jar like halfway or so. Then I just put it on slow cook and I just let it go overnight. It ended up going for about 12 hours. So it's the next day, and now we are ready to strain out our herbs. So the comfrey oil is the one I just made overnight. Obviously the calendula oil that I just made isn't ready yet, but this is a batch that I had going for a while now that I needed to use up. So I'm going to strain out my herbs in a strainer lined with a cheesecloth or a cotton cloth like I'm using here. I was going to mention you can use different types of oil if you'd like. Olive oil is just a good basic one. It's pretty cheap, readily available, and not a lot of people are allergic to it. And it's good for skin as well. So that's what I usually use. But you can use jojoba oil, almond oil, grapeseed oil, avocado oil, and those are all other good options as well. So now we have our infused oils, and you can see the different color from the comfrey to the calendula. They look beautiful. So we're going to use those to make our salves now. So you're going to need some beeswax. I've had this chunked beeswax for some time now. I do recommend the pellets. You can get them online. I'll link them below. They're just a lot easier to work with But you're going to want to measure out by weight 14 grams of beeswax, and then you're going to want to measure 84 grams of your infused oil. And so that's just a basic salve recipe. This is a 1:6 ratio. The amounts I'm giving you by weight I know fit perfectly in a 4-ounce jar, which is why I am doing it that way. I'm doubling it here because I'm going to be making 2 of the Comfrey salves with the Comfrey oil and the beeswax. Now for the Calendula salve, I'm going to do a little variation. I'm going to add shea butter in with it, so you're going to sub some shea butter in for some of the olive oil. So you're going to need the 14 grams of beeswax like before, and then 56 grams of the infused oil, and then 28 grams of shea butter. You can also sub cocoa butter if you'd like instead of the shea butter. And this is a great recipe to use for diaper salves for your babies. We are expecting our 3rd baby this December, so I'll be using these for the new baby when he or she gets here. You could also add in some bentonite clay to this recipe for a more natural approach to fighting diaper rash if you'd like. You can also add in zinc oxide. But as I said before, I find that just using the salves as is plenty good for keeping diaper rash at bay. I'm just adding a few drops of vitamin E to my oils that I'm going to put away for future use. It extends the shelf life of your oil. So we're going to go back to our slow cooker here using the double boiler method. Fill it with some water and put our jars on top of the rack. I needed to set it to a higher temperature than the slow cook setting to get the beeswax to melt because they were in such large chunks. It took a little bit longer, so I just put mine on the chicken/meat setting, and I just let it go until the beeswax was completely melted and everything was all melted together. So then when it is all melted, you can just take it and pour it into your clean glass jars. I'm adding a few more drops of vitamin E to each jar just to extend the shelf life and also add a little bit more skin nourishment to the salve. And once you have them poured, just let them sit out on your counter until they are all the way cooled down. And when they are all the way cooled down, they should look like this. And I'm just showing you the consistency of the salve. I think the 1:6 ratio gives a nice, perfect, spreadable consistency. And you can find this recipe with printable instructions on the website handsandfeethomestead.com, and I will leave it in the description box below. If you enjoyed this little tutorial, and I hope you learned something. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Take care and God bless.